Hey everyone, welcome to another Screenwriting Tips. My name is Tony D, and today we're talking about the comedy buddy cop movies, and how to write them. These movies have sort of been done to death, so the real challenge, of course, if you're familiar with the genre, is putting a new spin on it, because there have been a lot of them, and they're pretty tapped out. But let's take a look. So what are the elements of a buddy cop movie? Well, obviously, the main characters are usually cops. They're usually friends, and there's some sort of mystery to solve. It's got a good mixture of action and comedy, but in the end, it's about the friendship between the two main characters and how by the end of the movie they're buddies and the bad guys go to jail and all is well, right? So a classic example, Lethal Weapon and the various Lethal Weapon movies. It's a classic buddy cop movie. You got Crazy Riggs and you got retiring Murtaugh in the movie. Some of my favorite movies because written by Shane Black, who I'm a huge fan of. A crazy amount of sequels. Plus you got the TV show based on the movie, and they actually did a parody movie, National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 2, which I also saw. One of only two movies I walked out of the theater because I thought it was so horrendous and unfunny. I couldn't sit through it. Couldn't sit through the parody. Anyhow, Lethal Weapon is a classic example. So if you look at the setup, it's pretty standard. 3-act structure, very much a 3-act structure for a buddy cop movie. The first act, of course, introduces the buddies, how they get together. They don't get along, but they have to work together. And usually by the end of the first act, you introduce the villain. The second act is usually consumed by the mystery itself. And they have to come together during that second act to solve the mystery, either because they are forced to due to circumstance, or it's the only way the mystery is going to be solved. One of the more recent examples of that, again, a Shane Black movie, The Good Guys, starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, which if you haven't seen is another great movie. I really enjoy it, but I'm biased for Shane Black. I think he directed it too. Yeah, good stuff. Very classic. So yeah, that second act is taken up by, like, we got to solve the mystery. We gotta pull together all the clues. And the third act, usually pretty standard. The good guys are getting closer to the villain. The villains maybe tried to kill them or captured someone close to them. And then you got the final climactic battle in which the villain gets thwarted or killed and goes to jail or a hole in the ground, and our heroes come together, having survived this terrible ordeal, maybe getting their promotion or retirement or whatever, and overcoming all their obstacles and realizing, like, wow, we really work together, right? So that's your pretty standard buddy cop movie. Sometimes it can lean more towards comedy than the action, as in the case of Will Ferrell and what's his face, Mark Wahlberg in The Other Guys. The Other Guys is more of a comedy movie than it is a buddy cop movie, but it is in that realm. It just leans more heavily on the comedy because the plot's really not important in The Other Guys. You know, that's pretty late in the buddy cop movie sort of era. So naturally, it's more natural that those kinds of movies, you know, where it was more comedy, would happen, because at that point, you know, at this point, nobody really wants to do a buddy cop movie. They're a little too cliche, unless you can come up with a really new twist. I think one of the reasons The Good Guys got greenlit is it takes place in the 70s, so it had a cool vintage look to it. And it also took place in LA, and people in Hollywood love, like, old LA type stories. They love to, you know, relive the glory days, as it were, of Hollywood and Los Angeles. So I think that's part of the reason. I don't think the buddy movie as a genre is really an easy sell anymore. It kind of used to be. I mean, there was a time where, God, buddy cop movies just came out all the time. I think it was coming out of the 70s and 80s, there was still a lot of mysteries and a lot of cop movies. And some of them had been sort of sad and drab because they were more serious. And then as you got into the late 70s, early 80s, they started to become more comedic, and they wanted them to be lighter. So really, the classic buddy cop movie has that balance. There is comedy in it, but there's enough seriousness in the crime that actually happened, that you can, because the comedy is often driven by the danger. And if the danger isn't real, the comedy doesn't work. So in the case of the other guys, it's so ridiculous. The comedy works. Plus, it's Will Ferrell, and there's a lot of other elements other than the danger. In Lethal Weapon, which it's not a comedy, but it has some comedic elements in it. There is a real sense of danger, especially in the first one. Now, in the later sequels, that sense of danger tends to go away. As you get further in the sequels, they try to up the ante. But, once you keep seeing the characters over and over, it becomes less likely that you feel any sense of danger. Definitely in the first movie you do. In the first movie, Riggs is, very much a badass. You get a real sense that he's messed up, he's a badass. He becomes, as the sequels grind on, more of a cartoon version of what he is in the first movie. So that's a real danger, but that's not a problem you should really worry about. The question is, should you even write a buddy cop movie? You got to have a really new take. You really do, and it's going to be tough. Now, on the one hand, writing a buddy cop movie, because the genre itself, or subgenre, whatever you want to call it, is so known and so common, it's not exactly a bad script to write to show your abilities, especially if you can come up with a new take and snappy dialogue. The problem with actually selling it's just such a dated genre now. It's really tapped out unless you have something that just, part of the problem is, usually these things just run their course until literally Hollywood keeps making them, until so many of them lose movies. People sour on it, right? There was that Bruce Willis, Tracy Morgan movie that didn't seem to go anywhere, and that to me was one of the later ones that just it kind of put a damper on that genre, because when people remember the genre, they tend to remember the most recent ones. So it might be a few years before a buddy cop movie really becomes something people are interested in. But there is an upside to it in that you can take two big actors, two big personalities, with their whatever their shtick is. You can take two comedians. I remember when Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines did their buddy cop movie. God, that was a long time ago. I can't remember the name, but that was a fun movie, and they never made a sequel to it, unfortunately. But I thought the first one was a lot of fun. And that's the great thing about them. You can make a fun buddy cop movie because it's just a star vehicle for two big celebrities to, have some one-liners, have a little danger, and do some things that in a movie feels like almost anybody could do. Not that cops are, that they don't have expertise, but in the world of movies, almost anybody could play a cop with a little bit of training. Unless you're like morbidly obese or incredibly elderly, pretty much anybody could be a cop. And so you just put people in the uniform, you put them in the station, and you do whatever you have to do in order to sell them as cops. And some actors fit more than others. I mean, obviously Danny Glover, since he was Murtaugh for so long, you know, and he was a cop in Predator 2, one of my favorite films. You know, he's been seen so much as a cop in movies. Wonder if he was a cop in something else. I bet he was. People kind of remember him, and so when he plays a cop again, it's effortless, you know. Whereas someone like Billy Crystal, I think he was only a cop in that one movie. Definitely Gregory Hines wasn't, and I will say that Gregory Hines didn't really seem like a cop in the movie. Billy Crystal kind of pulled it off a little bit. I mean, all the wisecracking, it didn't feel like a serious cop movie at all, but it was fun. God, I can't remember the name of that movie. But those buddy cop movies, you know, they're sort of a spin-off of the buddy road movies or just the buddy movies where two guys team up. In a lot of ways, The Big Lebowski kind of follows that formula, although it doesn't. I mean, he doesn't really have a buddy. I guess Walter is kind of his buddy in it. I mean, the whole bowling team is, and Donnie to some extent. But you know, it follows that pattern because in the first act, the dude, you know, falls into this strange mystery, and then the second act, the mystery unfolds, even though the dude doesn't seem to be trying to solve it. And then by the third act, he kind of just puts it all together, and it felt very much like a, you know, cop movie without a cop, which is one of the reasons I love The Big Lebowski. I don't know about you, classic movie. But if you got to write a buddy cop movie, you know, if you got the time and it's a genre you like, I would say there's some use for it. But if you're serious about selling it, you better come up with a new take or something that's so low budget. Let's Be Cops, another buddy cop movie, and that was a new take. You know, it was a new take. Like, the two guys weren't cops. So, you know, that kind of thing can work. And you know, you can make it work, but you got to come up with something new. And you should do your research. I mean, don't go into it blind. Do a little research about how cops work. You know, if you're in a particular state and the movie has to take place in that state or city, you know, do a little research because that's very much a state level thing for a lot of the laws and how they're enforced. And you know, if you can, go on a ride along, talk to a friend who's a cop. I have relatives and friends who have been cops, and so I know a little bit about it. Not a lot, but you know, enough that I kind of know the research. I mean, there's plenty of stuff online, you know, so definitely do your research. Know enough about cops so you don't embarrass yourself putting something stupid. And do your research about crime, you know. The crime portion of it could maybe help you. If you come up with a new crime, a new kind of criminal, new kind of, you know, thing that someone's doing, also could be a revelation. That's what we want to see in a movie. We want to see something new. If you're not offering something new, you know, it's tough to sell. You know, if you can get on board with something, like right now the political climate's so polarized, if you came up with a, you know, a storyline in which there was a murder mystery and it was all politically motivated, and you know, the murder victim was killed because of his political beliefs, I mean, that would be a story that right now would resonate, depending on who got killed and whose political views were being targeted. I mean, it definitely would be something. And, you know, we certainly need more comedies in this world. So screenwriters, write me a buddy cop movie. I'd like to see the genre come back, and I'd like to see it be good. And don't be afraid to write comedies, damn it. Could use more comedy in this world. All right. That's it for Screenwriting Tips. My name is Tony D. Check me out on Patreon. Check out my comics at the Webcomic Factory and Superfrat. Smash like and subscribe and do all the internet things. I'm on BitChute, Dailymotion, YouTube, and of course on the Superfrat blog. I will see you next time.